Divers and people who spend a lot of time underwater. What's the creepiest, most unexplainable thing you've seen while in the depths? When I was a kid we used to go to a place during the summer holiday which had some very nice beaches. And in particular an estuary with a very wide river mouth. One summer there was a king tide where enough of the water emptied out of the river into the ocean that you could snorkel quite easily from one side of the river mouth to the other, as it got so shallow that it was only a meter or so deep at the deepest part. One day I decided to snorkel across from one beach to the one on the other side of the river, and about halfway across where the depth to the bottom was maybe half a meter, I was swimming along the surface looking down with my mask snorkel on, and a massive stingray passed directly underneath me. This thing was easily 2 meters across, covered in white scars and missing its tail. I just froze in the water and it felt like my heart stopped. If I had let my breath out, I would have dropped in the water low enough that I would have landed on it. It was so close. I wasn't in any danger, but having a massive creature appear so unexpectedly, so close up, was absolutely terrifying. Edit. To clear up some confusion, the stinger also gone. Just a sort of torn partial stump left of the tail. Got charged by a mother humpback. Her curious calf had swum around us and we were between her and the calf. Two of us never saw it coming. We were watching the baby, but our third diver watched her come. She kicked down and swam under us last minute. We didn't see anything until that 60 feet freight train passed just underneath us. I dropped my goggles and was trying to reach down in the river and grab it, but I pulled out a sheep skull by its sockets. Wasn't as creepy in hindsight, but 10-year-old me was scared. Two biggest. My buddy was taking pictures. He wanted one of me surrounded by a school of fish. So I started tossing out small pieces of hot dog. I was immediately surrounded by so many perch I couldn't see out. All of a sudden, a largemouth bass snagged one of the pieces of hot dog that was maybe 6 inches from my face. My mask blocked his approach. Scared the crap out of me. Second one was a night dive in very silty water. Visibility was less than 3 featuring lowest eye mark. If I can't see my outstretched arm, it isn't LT, 3 feet. We were near a flooded structure, maybe an old water tank. At about 35 feet, something was flashing from our lights. Suddenly, I'm covered in something and I couldn't see my light reflecting back. I pull it off my face, but it is still black and I can feel it touching the top of my head. I try over and over to free myself, but I don't feel caught, just covered. Finally, I get clear. It was a large plastic trash bag. Keep your trash out of the water, please. I got told a story once by a Maori language teacher of mine during my time at high school. We didn't learn much Maori, just listened to stories. A dam in the Waikato, New Zealand had begun to have visible cracks in the concrete on the outside part of the dam, and some drivers were organized to dive down and check the inside submerged part of the dam for damage on that side. While they were down there was the usual debris you would find behind a man-made wall which prevents the water from flowing as it would normally do if there wasn't a dam there. Turns out what they thought were large logs were in fact huge eels which had gotten to the size of logs due to being prevented from migrating to the sea, where they breed and die. So from being prevented from doing their natural life duties, they just get larger and larger. That would be creepy, seeing eels deep down in the water just floating around. You can dive in man-made lakes and check out what's left of old flooded homes and communities. It's pretty dark and spooky down there no matter what, especially when you think of all the big fish swimming around that are barely silhouettes until they're close. My buddy likes to dive in lakes. He said the creepiest thing, by far, is finding cemeteries 100 feet beneath the water in the dark, eerie quiet. I had a dive master that told me once he was diving somewhere and found a full skeleton wearing diving gear with the air on the tank turned off pretty deep down. If I remember correctly, they said they reported it to the police and it was found out the man's wife turned off his air while they were on a dive to murder him. I dive myself but heard this story from a Garda diver. In 2010 a man took a test drive in a car with a salesman, and in a suicide attempt he drove the car off the pier into the sea and drowned. The salesman managed to escape by breaking the window and swimming to the surface. The divers were dispatched to retrieve the other man's body. This isn't in the news report, which I have a link to below for anyone interested. Simply through working in marinas at the time, I was able to be part of the conversation with the diver in question. When he got to the car, he said the man was still facing forward, hands on the steering wheel, eyes wide. He'd been there a couple of hours now. Where it gets creepy is when the diver opened the driver door. This combined with the smashed window caused the currents to flow through the car, and the man's wide-eyed head turned around slowly with the force of it to face the diver. When living off the coast, some buddies and I would take regular fishing trips out to the oil rigs. We would always have some lines out, and a few would dive down and try to spear some mangrove, snapper or cobia. Once, while I and 2 others were diving down checking out the structure, we decided we needed to move due to lack of life around the rig. We all get back in the boat, and as one of my buddies is reeling in a line, we had a red snapper baited on. An easily 8-10 FT tiger shark starts chewing on it right behind the prop. So close I could have poked his eye out. The idea that massive animal was in the water so close to me and 2 of my friends, but no one saw. It is terrifying. I bet he was watching us the whole time. Edit. Grammar. Rescue recovery diver here. Every time I've recovered a drowning victim I get the creeps. Unfortunately, a lot of people are under the impression that every underwater environment is like the movies and there's absolute clarity. That's rarely the case. One evening I got called out for a young girl that jumped from a bridge. She likely survived the fall and entry. We have a morbid term for what happened to her upon hitting the water. Plugged, I found her with a surprising amount of visibility in relatively shallow water. She was stuck in the mud to just below her knees, and you could see the fear locked into her eyes face. There's nothing peaceful about suicide by bridge. When I was a kid swimming in the lake at summer camp, I dove underwater and I swear I saw someone in scuba gear hiding underneath the dock watching us. I told the lifeguard, but he wasn't able to find anyone. An old World War II ammunition ship off the south coast of England was full of brass-topped shells. Most had been taken by divers over the years, and it was now very rare to see them, apart from a pile in one corner of the ship. This pile of shiny brass metals was miraculous and touched and remarkably clean after spending years underwater, and you only found out why if you swam near them. Out of the murky darkness, the largest eel I have ever seen snakes forward. Without exaggeration, this thing had a head the same size as a horse's head, full of jagged teeth. I could not see the body as it looped into the dark and deeper into the ship. No one got near those shells. Turns out for years this thing had been guarding the shiny brass shells, slithering over them, making them shine. We found out at the bar later that he was famous in the area and many people went to the wreck just to see him. No idea why this giant creature was guarding them like a dragon and its horde. But some said eels are like magpies and like shiny things. Edit. It has been pointed out it was probably a conger eel, not a moray. I'm honestly not sure as it was years ago and very dark. I have updated accordingly. I'm a commercial diver and was once on a job cleaning a potable water reservoir. I'd been in other reservoirs before, but this was by far the biggest. At 40x 80 meters, the hatch was in a corner. So when you were in the far corner of the reservoir, it was completely pitch black, and you just had to hope your light didn't go out. I was about halfway through a 3-hour dive when the batteries in my torch started going flat. I watched the beam get narrower and dimmer until it cut out completely. It's not a huge problem if you lose light, as you can just follow your umbilical back to the hatch. Just as I started walking back, some obnoxiously loud banging started somewhere in the reservoir. I was the only diver in there, so it both confused and scared the shit out of me. Needless to say, I ran back to the hatch as fast as I could. I ended up getting my torch changed out and doing another hour in the water, but didn't hear the noise again. I still have no idea what it was, but the combination of my torch going out and loud banging coming from somewhere gave me a hell of a fright.